Hey, welcome everybody to Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes, and I'm the Chief Sales Architect and author of Bulletproof Selling. Now, here we believe that hope is not a sales strategy, and so we're here to turn that around by increasing the pipeline performance of salespeople and the results of their teams. So if this is your first time joining us on our live stream series, then let you know we get to share insights from the top minds in sales, from the top authors, speakers, consultants, trainers, and of course, those that are actually out there in the field managing sales teams. And that is who we get to join with today. So my commitment is that every single one of these episodes, we get to create a sales system with the people that we're interviewing to make sure that they can get more consistent results in their companies, and you, the listener and the viewer, that you can get better results with your sales, no matter the size of your team or the size of your goals. So I'm really excited to be welcoming our guest today. His name is Troy Steele, and he works in an industry that's actually harder than diamonds, if you will. So I'm really excited to get Troy to share with us about that. Troy, sir, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, sir. I know you're all the way up in Canada today. That's pretty cool. I'm opposite side of the world here in Tampa, Florida. So Troy, welcome, sir. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. As you mentioned, Troy Steele, diamond blade industry. It's very specific in the construction world. We cut concrete, core concrete, anything concrete related that needs to be removed. That's our company supplies products for that. It's a very interesting time in general, and very interesting time in our world as well.
So talk to me a little bit about the size of the team that you manage, a little bit about kind of your history in sales. I mean, how did you end up where you are? I know you weren't born in this position, so what was your journey like, man?
Sure, yeah. So right now I manage a team of six salespeople across the country, across Canada. I'm up north here. Our team has grown probably double in the last year and a half. That's kind of what my role has been here, is to help increase our presence across Canada. We've been primarily a Western Canadian company, but growing every month, every year. I started in sales right out of university. Started in kind of the tech industry, I guess, if you will, selling cell phones and Blackberries, I guess it was at that time. Always business to business sales. Then moved into construction probably in 2006, and have been in the construction world ever since. Diamond blade industry for many, many years. Took a small break to sell some equipment, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then have been in the sales management world for probably almost 10 years. Nice. And you know, I've always had positions where my sales management coincides with not necessarily a territory, but I really enjoy getting out in the field. So have lots of chance to still get out in the field as well as in the office.
I love it. So being in sales management that long, this is a question that we would love to be able to get out of every one of our guests. Where do you see salespeople relying on hope a little more than they should in how they sell?
Yeah, I mean, hope is it's not a bad thing, but it's certainly not everything. You know, hope and positivity. I have one of my sales reps is probably the most positive guy I've ever met in my life, and you know, there's definitely power in that, but preparation, I think, is very powerful as well, and he's also very prepared. So I think hoping for the best outcome out of being prepared and presenting your best self, I think, is probably where hope fits in.
Yeah, and where do you see folks relying on it a bit too much? You know, and it doesn't have to be in your company. I mean, because you've been in sales, you know, decades now at this point. Across all the salespeople that you know, where do you see folks really leaning on hope? Like they hope that prospect's going to pick up the phone this time. They hope they're going to get that call back. They hope somebody's going to, you know, actually sign the proposal today. Where do you see hope playing in a little bit more than it probably should?
You kind of right in that niche or that spot that you mentioned there is after they do everything, the hope that they're going to get a response, or the hope that someone's going to call them back, or the hope that they're going to make the sale. I think that's probably the spot where you need to be the most active, not just relying on maybe getting a response or hoping that things are going to work out the way they want them to.
And we're going to dive into that for sure. So I'm really curious to know, because you're in an industry that was massively affected by COVID-19, as a lot of industries were. The interesting thing, though, is that I don't know if you were positively or negatively affected, because I know a lot of people in the construction industry had a great year because they had great supply chain set up in place. Their customers still had revenue and money coming in to buy their products and services. How did COVID really kind of, one, how did it affect your company? And then we'll dive into how it affected your sales team.
Sure. Yeah. Our company as a whole, we've still grown through COVID. We've had some excellent times. Our industry is kind of a different industry. It's a fairly resilient industry, whether it comes to new construction or even in times where there's not a whole lot of new construction going on. There tends to be more renovations and repurposing of spaces and things like that. So our industry typically can kind of flow through any type of economy, which is quite nice. I mean, not to say that we're recession proof or anything like that, but certainly helps that we can keep busy throughout any type of economy.
And you and I had chatted a little bit about the kind of supply chain issues that I know a lot of companies in your industry were affected by. Were you affected by those kind of same types of things where people were ordering stuff and it was just a wait list because of COVID and of shipping? Or did you guys already have those kind of kinks worked out ahead of time so you were able to deliver on time and still meet all of those previous, like 2019 ship times?
Yeah, we're actually still dealing with a bit of it right now. We certainly have had to do a lot of changing of processes and some different things behind the scenes. As a whole, our customers really haven't been affected by it, which is kind of the most important thing. We've kind of been that if you use the duck on water analogy, our feet have been going crazy underwater, but we look calm and cool on the surface. So our customers appreciate that. No, and to be honest with you, they know that everybody's having struggles right now. We do a lot of manufacturing as well, so raw materials is a bit of an issue right now. But we've been able to make our way through it and just trying to find the proper alternatives that don't compromise any kind of quality, right?
Right. And so, and I understand that your company's doing a great job with that. I love the analogy of the duck on the water, feet a little flapping fast as they can to try to keep going. And then, so that's the company. Then talk to me a little bit about how you saw sales change for your company and your industry going through COVID. I mean, I imagine in the construction world, a lot of it, because a lot of my clients are in construction, they're face to face. They'd love to be able to knock on doors and shake hands and go out to golf and all that. How did your folks have to shift in 2020 in order to keep meeting number and making sure those relationships continued?
Sure, yeah. So it's interesting because it's a very different strategy or very different results across the country. Our history is we're fairly regional in Western Canada. We've just been branching out across the rest of the country and the U.S. for that matter. And in Western Canada, it's been great because people are a little bit more in the status quo mode right now. We don't need a whole lot of change. We don't need to try a whole lot of different things right now. Everything's good. So in our markets where we're dominant, that's been fantastic for us because it's allowed us to keep our competitors out of the picture. But in the areas where we're that new kid on the block, it's presented different challenges. And my team has done a great job of utilizing all the resources. Social media has been a really big one for us. Historically, we've never really done much with social media, but this year kind of gave us that kick that we needed to really dive in there and make sure that we were keeping up. And we have a great social media coordinator that takes care of all of our different platforms that we have, and our customers are actually responding fantastically to that, which in our world, the construction world is great. Maybe a little bit surprising with
construction has always been kind of like the latecomer to technology because their hands are in building things all day and using different types of technology for sure. But the social media piece, we're seeing that to be embraced in a way that we wish would have happened 5 years ago. But COVID kind of, like you said, gave everybody that kick in the pants. We can't meet face to face anymore. We still need to get the word out, let people know that we're here, the value we have to offer. So you mentioned a word that just really makes me jump up and want to shout hooray, and that's the word process. So I'd love to hear about the things that you find separate good salespeople from great salespeople in the way of process. Regardless of tenure, regardless of age, what are those salespeople that are really kicking butt doing in their processes that the people that are struggling aren't?
Sure. Yeah, I think in general, in my time, the most important thing and the most important part of the process has been trying to understand the customer, trying to understand the customer's pains, the customer's issues, what they like, what they don't like, even on a personal scale, trying to understand the customer. I mean, obviously you have to have the right price, the right product, the right quality, but you also need to have a relationship with these people as well. So for me, it's finding out what makes that customer tick. What is he concerned about? Where does he have issues? Where can I alleviate problems with him? I have no preconceived notions when I go into a new customer as to what I intend to sell them.
Right.
That really gets kind of designed as we go, and as we go through the process of where his issues are, where his pains are. I mean, as salesmen, the term low-hanging fruit gets thrown around a bit. You always want to start there because that's your best opportunity, right? It's the easiest, best opportunity. So that even holds true within an organization and within a customer's organization. Is if you can alleviate his biggest pain in the easiest way possible, then you're going to get multiple opportunities to do that with other items, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned that understanding a customer has to come first. I absolutely agree with you, because otherwise, we're just trying to sell them something and shilling a product basically. Whereas this may not be what you need, but it's what I'm going to try to sell you. Well, that's not a very good way to go about doing business. Not a great way to develop those long-term relationships. I'm really curious to know though, how do you turn that discovery process of you're going in cold? This organization has maybe bought something like what you sell in the past, or they have a need because they're in an industry that buys something like what you sell. What's the process that you and your salespeople use to help you understand really, what vertical of your product or service offering do you now need to begin discussing with that customer?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty simple conversation in our industry. Our customers are fairly open with us typically. They're open to discuss their business with us. They enjoy discussing their business for that matter, as most people would like talking about their business. A lot of our customers have built their business from the ground up, so there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of a pride and emotion involved. So when you get them talking about it, it's kind of an easy way to do it. But for us to kind of take that from the discovery stage to the actual sales or implementation stage, a lot of times, it can really depend on how engaged that customer is. Is there demonstrations that need to happen? Is there product that needs to be sent on a test basis? Do we need to get out on the job site with the customer? It really still is kind of direction is kind of established by the way the customer is reacting and where they want to move and how they want to move forward, right?
So often in this, I come out of the world of the military with this, right? All of the high performing things. Got to serve alongside some Canadian forces, by the way. You guys and gals are awesome. Just in case you didn't know, really, really high performers there. And what we learned across, 24 countries of studying this stuff was that it's not always about our plan, because as you mentioned, so much of it is really based upon, we need to take the initiative always. And as salespeople, we're doing that by reaching out first, not just twiddling our thumbs, hoping somebody wanders into our shop to buy something we have, right? So we're taking the initiative, but then based upon what our prospect does or what our customer does, that really decides where we go next. And
Absolutely.
So how do you make sure that your salespeople are remaining nimble and not getting married to a certain flow or a certain script? Because it's really easy to tell when somebody's using a script and they completely, like you said something that wasn't in their script and they just have no idea what to do. I hear that a lot on the cold calls that I get. So how do you make sure that your folks are responding well in order to really keep open eyes and open ears as to what's going on in their prospect companies?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been my way of doing things, and I think that's really rubbed off on my guys. I have fantastic salespeople. They really understand solution selling, I guess, is if you want to use one of those buzzwords. Solution selling is very important. It's very important to understand the customer. Really, we just do what we're doing right now. We go in and we have conversations with these guys. We don't cold call and read a script. We don't even really want to. I mean, obviously it's different now. I mean, and typically we want to get in front of these customers. And once we get in front of these customers and show them that we're just, regular people like they are, they tend to open up a little bit more to us. Yeah, I mean, we kind of just to talk about what you're talking about, the script or the plan, I think was it Mike Tyson who said everyone has a plan until they got punched in the face. Well, that customer saying something that's off your script is kind of the verbal equivalent of getting punched in the face, right? So if you have that script that you need to be referring to all the time and something goes off track, then you really can get lost pretty easy.
And this is something that I think a lot of salespeople, they capture once, and then they keep it to themselves, and no one else on the team ever gets to benefit. And here's what I'm talking about like that, because we have a lot of clients where every once in a while, and when I say once in a while, it's like once a week usually, where they'll hear something, one of their salespeople will hear something on a call or in a meeting, and they've never heard that before. Because some piece of changing technology, or there's a new competitor in the market, something like that. Prospect will say, well, how do you all handle X, Y, or Z? Or what's your pricing structure for delivery inside of 7 days rather than 90 days? Or something weird will come up. The salespeople will, that salesperson in the moment will capture it, try to respond to it as best they can, then maybe research an answer so they know the answer for themselves, but they never share it with their team. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. I'd love to hear, if you have, where you see the same weird kind of new question crop up amongst different salespeople on your team before you finally realize as the leader, we should probably help them answer this. Have you ever come across that in the time you've been selling?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we come across that for sure in our industry because a lot of different job site applications and things like that can happen. I mean, to try and find a specific example might be difficult, but I can tell you what we do to combat that is, we typically have a sales meeting every 2 weeks via Zoom, and we are constantly discussing exactly what you're talking about. Anything new, any competitive information, any applications we haven't seen before, anything kind of out of the ordinary, because it's very different across the country how everybody does their job and does their business, but it's also very similar. So we tend to try to get together as much as we can and communicate with each other as much as we can. And I encourage everyone in the company to communicate with each other, whether it be, the salespeople, the outside sales, inside sales. Everyone talks to everyone on a regular basis. So we kind of are able to share that information, but encouraging people to open up and give us that and making it an enjoyable time and an enjoyable forum to present a different story or something we've never seen before kind of really goes a long way to encouraging them to present that information.
And we, in our book, Bulletproof Selling, dedicated a whole chapter to this very process where you get your team together once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever that looks like, and have people openly share, what is the new stuff that we've seen? What are the new questions? What are the new complaints, the new objections, all the things that your salespeople are coming across that in most organizations, and it's a shame, but most salespeople will keep that stuff to themselves over the course of a career, which is why after 30 years of hearing this stuff, that salesperson is so valuable. It's not because they're any better at closing sales. It's because they've learned over 30 years a lot of mistakes and what not to do. Right? That's actually what the case is. That leads to more closed sales, but it's not because they're any smarter or more brilliant than the folks that you have on the team. So this is a beautiful system to build, I think. We're going to jump into it. When we talk about building a system for something like this, which we'll define as, how do we make sure that we're staying on top of changes in our prospect and in our customers' world, right? Whether that's a new question or a new competitor that's entered the space that we're just hearing about for the first time from our prospect. We talk about trimming hope away from our strategy, just like we started, right? Hope is not a sales strategy for most people. In high-performing teams, definitely not. So we talk about trimming hope. We use this acronym TRIM. It starts with a T, which is the trigger. So if I'm going to take the time once a week, once every 2 weeks to gather my team together, to get them to begin to share with me the new things they've heard, the objections, the questions that they didn't have immediate answers to, what is the trigger event for that for you? Is it something like a piece of paper, a checklist they can write stuff down on? What does that look like for you to make sure that this thing does happen consistently every 2 weeks?
Right. Well, for us, it's pretty simple. It's scheduled. We have it scheduled every 2 weeks, same time every 2 weeks. Everybody's aware of it. Typically, we might miss one out of every five times. But if we have, one or two people that can't make it because of other commitments, then we'll shift around. But predominantly, it's the same time every couple of weeks, and kind of that consistency. Everybody knows. The first few times we started doing it, you say it's starting at 9 o'clock. Okay, it takes us until 9:30 to get everybody in the same room and off their phone and whatnot. But now, kind of everybody's programmed that okay, we're going to do this at the same time, and everybody's ready to go, right?
I love it. The trigger is that it's on the schedule. And I was just actually running this very thing for a sales team this morning. So the other thing that we find to be very helpful is for this thing to appear on an agenda.
Sure.
There's a consistent agenda every week. Here are the 5 things, the numbers that I need to bring, my call results, my connection rates, whatever it is that we're tracking as a team, right? I gather that beforehand, so I show up to the meeting prepared because it's on the agenda. And part of that agenda is, what's the new stuff that you've heard, right? What are those kind of outlier situations? So that's a great trigger. Now, the second part of this TRIM acronym is the R, which is to make this thing repeatable. Now, that might come out of an agenda. It might come out of a schedule where every single 2 weeks we know we're going to be chatting about this. But the other side to this is to make it repeatable for the salespeople, because I'm burning 1,000 miles a minute as a salesperson working for your company through the course of a week. How do I make sure to take the time to write this stuff down? Because I know if I have to wait 2 weeks, the stuff that I'm going to remember is just not going to be as accurate as it might have been if I'd have really captured it throughout those 2 weeks. So is there anything that you're doing with your salespeople now, or that you've seen great sales leaders do to encourage their people to track this stuff so that when they show up for their 2-week meeting, they actually have stuff to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, our salespeople are fairly autonomous in terms of they're not required to send a whole lot of reports back to myself or anyone else in the company, but they're also very good at being independent like that. I think they've just learned, to be honest with you. We've been doing this now for almost 2 years, where we meet every couple of weeks, and they've really just learned the kind of information that I'm looking for. They know what they need to pay attention to throughout the time. I mean, in terms of notes, they're constantly taking notes on everything regardless. So I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't really asked, but for me, and what I assume their process is as well, is, for me, I sit down, half an hour before the meeting, go through my notes, my notebook for the last couple of weeks, and just pick out anything that might have been of interest or that I want to make sure I discuss. It's a pretty free, open forum for anyone to discuss. I mean, we do go around the table and we'll ask, what are your highlights of the week? Good, bad, anything we need to help you with, any issues, anything like that. So I think they got a pretty good idea of what we're looking for when we get into that meeting, and they've done a great job of it.
And then the third acronym, the third piece of this acronym is the I, which is for making this thing improvable. And so I'm going to take a wild guess that when you started doing this, however many years ago it looks a little different today than it might have back in the day. Where at first it might have just been, all right, has anybody got anything else to share? Because they want to get back on the phones, back on the email, and they shake their heads no, and then they're out. And today you're like, no, we're going to stay here probably until we get a couple of good items, because that's how we improve. So how has that changed for you over the course of the years, where you're actually kind of taking like active feedback out of your team and making sure that we are discussing it, we are capturing it?
Right. Yeah. So it's changed significantly. I mean, probably the biggest change is the time it's taken us to do the calls has been cut in half, but the value of the calls has doubled. So we've become much more efficient in these calls. I mean, it's still a great way for us to take 5-10 minutes and ask everybody how their weekend was and see, what's different across the world. I mean, probably the first 15 minutes of every call now is what's going on COVID related in your area, or what are the different rules or restrictions this week, or how does it affect our world? But I guess the best way to explain it would be that they've really come a long way in terms of preparing themselves. So the process has improved because they have been prepared, and they know what they're doing, and they know what they're looking for. I certainly, it's interesting because you're making me think about it more and more here as we go, which I haven't really thought about. It's just something that's happened, and it's really to the point now where we don't have to have that moment where, okay, guys, let's get something valuable here before we finish this meeting. It just happens organically now. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows what kind of information we're looking for. They know what kind of information will benefit the other team members, and they know what kind of information they need to keep track of. So we've really it's just been a very organic, natural process that our meetings have just evolved into what they are.
And I think it's very lucky that it has evolved that way, where a lot of organizations try this for years and they never quite hit it. So I'm really happy that you were able to find something that worked for your team that allows you to improve. And so if we've gone through the trigger, we've gotten making this thing repeatable, it's improvable. The last piece of this, I think, is going to be the really interesting and insightful piece, because I want to learn this from your team. How do you make this thing measurable? Because if all you guys do is talk about it, Well, that's good. Maybe somebody remembers 10% of what they got out of the meeting, and that one question came up, and here's how Troy recommended we answer it, and then they go off. But 10% probably is not a really good return on everybody's time. So what do you do with the information that's discussed at these meetings, these new questions, these new pieces of competition that are coming in, to make sure that the time is well spent? Like how do you make sure this stuff actually creates change in your team?
Sure. Yeah. I think the team itself, at the end of every meeting, we'll maybe go over a little bit of what our points are and what needs to come out of the meeting. We'll certainly set individual action items for individual people so they can follow up, and it's my responsibility, I guess, to follow up with them to make sure they follow up, which really doesn't have to happen very often, other than, hey, how did that work out, right? But putting together action items for the individual team members. We have everyone on the team. We have outside sales staff in this meeting. We have inside sales staff. We have administrative staff, and then we have some even some people that do some shipping, receiving, some things like that. So we really kind of learn how each other's processes affect each other, and we have everyone on the call that can maybe do something about that, right? To fix it. So those action items, rather than me saying, okay, let me talk to this person, that person's right there. Let's talk to them right now and figure out how we can do this. So I guess that's the measurable part of it, would be to create those action items and make sure that everybody's following up on what they're supposed to be doing.
And you mentioned something absolutely critical there that I think a lot of organizations miss the ball on with their sales meetings, in that what comes out of those meetings might just not affect the sales team. The salespeople might discover something that should be mentioned to your warehouse, or that would really, really be well advised if we could pass that on to the finance department, because our clients are asking for different payment schedules, and so far our process is this, and if we ask for something else, it's going to make somebody's ears bleed up there. Well, we need to let them know this thing needs to change. And so just keeping it in the sales team, well, that's good as long as they're using it, but better is if we really identify what other parts of our organization might this new thing affect, or who would really benefit from knowing about this, and to make sure that we share that information so that we are operating as an organizational team and not just a sales team, because that's how sales teams get bad reputations, where no one really wants to do anything. They just don't have anything to do with them. Oh, they're in sales. They're all cowboys and cowgirls there. They don't care about the company. Well, it's because the sales team really never takes the initiative to share and to act like they're on a team. I find that to be
absolutely. Yeah, and the sales team, I encourage our sales team to be very appreciative, and they are very appreciative, because they understand that they're not the only ones that make the company successful.
Right. Absolutely right. I love it, man. Well, this has been an awesome system. Before we hop off the air, I want to let people know, how do they get more about you, more about your company? How do they connect with you on social media? If we want to get deeper into the world of Troy, how do we make that happen? Yeah,
so Cyclone Diamond Products is our company. We're all across all social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We operate, like I said, in Canada, the US. So we're out there. You just Google us, you search us. We're a pretty specific industry. We deal predominantly with concrete cutting and coring companies. So hopefully we'll have some of those that see this interview.
Yeah, I love it, man. Well, for all of those who are looking to connect with Troy, make sure you do that. We've had a lot of fun with him. Obviously, his team is doing something very unique. So if you're another sales leader and you just want to have a chat, Troy probably be open to that with you. And for us here at Bulletproof Selling, make sure you're following us here on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube for these live streams. And of course, check out the podcast that comes out of this on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere podcasts can be found. And so for more sales systems to help your pipeline performance, check out the free resources that we are posting every single day of the week over at bulletproof-selling.com. Well, Sean Rhodes here. It's been a pleasure serving you alongside Troy Steele. Troy, let's get out there and make selling bulletproof.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sean.